means the exact same thing, does not sound scripted, will not trigger that sort of spidey sense in police and prosecutors.
We're the Armed Attorneys. Today we're talking about the top 3 self-defense myths we see in our practice. And you'll want to stick around to the third one because this comes up in almost every single self-defense case. But before we begin, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting that like button. And to kick off this conversation, what's the first myth you see, Emily, that just won't seem to die?
People take this one very seriously. And you hear it, and you know you've heard it before, and maybe you wonder about the truth of it. If you shoot someone on your threshold of your house, you should drag the body inside.
Yikes.
That is an absolute myth. And you think, I think that we're starting to bust this one up a little bit more,
Yes.
But people still bring this up to me all the time. And absolutely not. You should not drag that body inside. Forensics are so sophisticated. Maybe that worked, I don't know.
In the 1800s?
Sure, I was going to say 100 years ago, maybe that worked. Forensics are so sophisticated now. Do not touch that body. It is tampering with evidence in most states, if not all states. It's a felony in most states, if not all states. So you could be in a situation where your use of self-defense was righteous and was justified, and you're still charged with a felony because you drug that body inside.
Yeah, I think the misconception is, hey, maybe I'll get more self-defense rights or more legal presumptions, like let's say you're in a castle doctrine state. And the fact of the matter is, not only will you not get the legal presumptions or the extra protections under self-defense, but now the forensic evidence doesn't line up. And it looks very, very suspicious. But that brings us to our kind of second self-defense myth we see come up over and over. And we talked about this recently on a different show, but the use of wasp spray instead of using pepper spray. At the end of the day, wasp spray is designed for wasps. It's not designed for people. And why it's such a bad idea. Because it's not designed for or intended for the use on humans, it could cause serious bodily injury. In most states, if whatever you use to defend yourself causes protracted loss of a limb or function of an organ. In this case, let's say eyes. Let's say it causes someone to blindness or causes reduced vision. That's going to be considered serious bodily injury.
Oh, yeah. Permanent scarring and disfigurement is an element of serious bodily injury. And imagine just someone doesn't have their full vision after having been wasp sprayed in the eyes. That's absolutely conceivable. And that's serious bodily injury.
And then so what that brings us to this problem is, well, if a person causes serious bodily injury, in most states, they will have to have been justified in a use of deadly force. Deadly force being, something that causes serious bodily injury or death. And so, most of the time when someone is using or deploying a chemical spray like pepper spray, maybe they're justified in using force, something that wouldn't cause serious bodily injury or death. But then when they're using that wasp spray in that same situation, you kind of come into this conflict.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not agree more. So I think we'll go on to myth number 3, which is telling the police that you were in fear for your life. And this is something I see come up in virtually all of my self-defense cases. And I know you're thinking that shouldn't be a myth, and we've sort of addressed this before in a previous video, but do not say those words, I was in fear for my life.
Yep.
Right.
It sounds scripted, and it reminds me of South Park.
My God, it's coming right for us!
Hey, it wasn't coming right for us. It was just sitting there.
Shh, not so loud. Now there's just a technicality.
Police, prosecutors, detectives, they have become inoculated to this phrase. And it was popular, popular self-defense nomenclature and considered to be a best practice, several decades ago. And that is not the case anymore.
No, overused now. They think that you just have it as a script in your mind. You can say the same thing without saying that scripted phrase, I was in fear for my life. I always recommend, I knew I was going to die, or I knew he was going to kill me, or, I had to save my life by doing this.
Yep.
Means the exact same thing, does not sound scripted, will not trigger that sort of spidey sense in police and prosecutors.
Yeah, and I imagine that same skepticism goes on to juries because, again, this has entered popular culture. It has been derided, and it's just not effective.
And the prosecutor will argue it to the jury at closing argument.
Exactly.
I've had that happen. So,
Yes.
It really is. Yes, it does get passed on to the jury, whether they buy it or not, but why risk it?
Right. Well, we hope you enjoyed this content. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video. a huge chunk of our viewers are not subscribed. We'll post that statistic right now. I'm sure it's on screen. But the best thing you can do to help us out, subscribe. It really helps the channel. It's free. And if you don't like us, you can always unsubscribe.
Yep. And please comment below. We pull a lot of these videos from your questions and comments. It's really helpful to us. And we also try to answer everything we can. Until next time, we're the Armed Attorneys.